40 million years ago, the Earth burned. The last of the remnants knew that the planet was dead, as was the human race. At least, if nothing was done. Maybe we deserved it. We spent all of our time making bigger and better weapons to kill people we never met on the other side of the world. People who could not affect us at all, except for the fact that they had the same weapons we did and wanted to destroy us just as badly as we wanted to destroy them. There was only one inevitable outcome for humanity: to destroy ourselves in fire. The last remnants of Earth realized this, but despite this fact, they did not give up. They built ships to travel the stars. Maybe out there, the human race could continue on. So the remnants used what they had left to create ships to send to other worlds. Surely, if enough ships were sent, then some would survive. And at least one did. They named the planet Harmony and made a plan to never repeat the mistakes of Earth. To ensure this, they genetically manipulated themselves to be susceptible to the transmissions of an overseeing computer, the Oversoul, basically giving this benevolent AI a telepathic connection to the people of Harmony. So for 40 million years, the Oversoul allowed humanity only technology that would make them better, and nothing that would allow them to repeat the disaster of Earth. As a young teen, the Harmony Saga was exciting and different. At the time, I missed most of the implications of the book and just enjoyed it for its strange and unique setting. Rereading it as an adult, it almost feels like a completely different series. I knew nothing of politics as a teen. I had no idea what the word gerrymandering even meant, let alone had enough of a grasp on it to see it when it was presented. I just related to the main character as a boy living under a strong, commanding mother. Just like Naif, I had fingerprints on my cheek a few times. Don't get me wrong, unlike Naif, I probably deserved it. I remember thinking that the wilds outside the walls of Basilica sounded like a utopia free of rules. I couldn't understand why anyone would want to live in Basilica. As an adult, some of the themes I missed before now feel heavy-handed. Maybe because I spent too much time learning of politics and how the American government functions. Or doesn't. It's usually clear to me which side of the aisle an author is on. I just try to avoid that because I want this channel to be about interesting stories that take you away from reality, not rub your face in it, which is the whole reason I have always loved sci-fi. Card never makes his opinion clear, he just presents stories and lets you decide. I was always told that if you want to keep the conversation civil, don't talk politics or religion. Well, unfortunately, those are two of the main themes of this book. But don't worry, unless you have no sense of fairness, you should understand the problems that Card is putting forth very early on in this series. Card does a decent job of putting sci-fi to one of its best uses. Sci-fi can hold a mirror up to society without causing people to fall back on their preconceived ideas and their conditioning, forcing them to actually think through their beliefs instead of just priming them to spew out a line their friends, family, or role models have spat out 1,000 times before without any thought. So please don't get caught up in what your political side has told you. If you really read this book, you will see that both sides of the aisle are admonished in their own ways, whether intentionally or not. So don't read, or in this case hear, one line and think you know who Card is. As someone who has read all of his work, I still have no clue who Card is. He is one of the most unique writers I know of. Does that mean he's the best? Well, that's a subjective opinion, so I will leave that up to you to decide. I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying that Card touches on a lot of moral issues in his writing, but never offers a concrete opinion. Once again, he leaves that up to you. Now, let's get into the story. One of the cities on the planet Harmony is called Basilica, a city controlled entirely by women. But it is no utopia, for women and men do not differ as much as they like to pretend. Within the city walls, men were not much better than slaves. The women hoarded all the knowledge, property, wealth, and their religion. Men were not allowed to own property anywhere in the extended city, even in the districts outside the walls. They were not even allowed within the city walls unless they signed a marriage contract with a woman, were children under the age of 14, or were studying to be a scholar. Typically, at 14, the male children were exiled to outside the city walls, younger if the mother so chose, which they regularly did, abandoning their male children to the dangerous wilds of outside the city walls. Within the city walls, men had no say, and women had all the power, not even allowing men to look at the holy lake at the center of the city. The men were given no security, paid next to nothing for their toils, and allowed no property or power, which allowed the landowning women to price gouge the men who were forced to rent from them without consequences. And this is how we meet the Wetchik family. The father, just called the Wetchik, is a trader who makes his money in other, non-women-controlled cities. He lives with his 4 sons within the city limits, but outside the city walls. The eldest, Meb, doesn't seem to work. The second, Elia, is following in his father's footsteps as a trader. The third, Isib, is a cripple studying in the city to become a scholar. And the youngest son, Naif, was recently exiled outside the city walls at the age of 14, still trying to find his way, still attending classes with his older scholar brother in the city during the day, as he has not yet ruled out the possibility that he too may become a scholar. It is at one of these classes that the youngest, Naif, finds his father Wetchik waiting one day. His mother brings him and his crippled older brother into a private area on the portico, where his father, a good man, but one that has never shown any interest in religion, tells them of a vision he had while traveling through the desert on a trading mission. His vision is of the city burning, but as he tells the story, Naif notices that 2 strange girls are also in attendance. The younger of the 2 is thought to be a seer, Luette, one of the few people alive who could talk directly to the Oversoul, or so it was said. Naif doubted this, however, as he had met her once before, and she had made the insane claim that the woman of his dreams, his love since childhood, would offer him a marriage contract, and he would decline. Something that could not possibly be true. But here she was, critiquing his father's supposed vision. Father believed he saw the city on fire and needed to warn everyone. But with prodding from Luette, he realized that his vision was actually that the whole world would burn, and his warning was to tell people to return to the old ways. Luette says this is a true vision from the Oversoul, but Naif has had enough. His father was a respected man, but this 12-year-old Luette was talking to him like he was a child. The whole religion was just stories anyway. He did not believe any of them, so how could the fictional Oversoul say anything to anyone? He said as much. His mother, however, thinks very highly of herself, even making claims that she is better than even the other women of the city. And because of this, she holds her son to a higher standard than others. She chastises them for not knowing what no one had taught them, for not knowing what no woman had told any man, for not knowing the difference between the obvious fables she had told them and the fanciful stories which she now claimed were true. namely, that when the women of Basilica soaked in the waters of the forbidden holy lake at the center of the city, they received visions from the Oversoul. Naif had enough. He leaves the meeting disgusted by his own parents. He knows this may mean the end of his lessons in the city, but why should he care? His oldest brother Meb left the city at the age of 8 and never looked back. Now, he lived the freest life of anyone Naif knew. Why not be like him? Maybe he could be an artist or an actor. Maybe today, Naif would find out what his true calling was. He wandered through the city looking at people's works from different professions. For hours he wondered. He didn't have the skills to be a sculptor or painter. Maybe he could be a singer or actor. He wandered down to where the plays were practiced and began to watch a rehearsal. It was a lowbrow satire with beginner actors trying to find their way in the business still. The perfect spot for Naif. All satire actors wore masks to protect them from the people that they made fun of, preventing the self-proclaimed victims from taking revenge on them. But as he watched the play they were rehearsing, he realized something dreadful. The satirical play was about his father, and it was not flattering in any way. They were calling his vision a lie, and calling him a scam artist, attempting to increase his family's prestige by falsely proclaiming he spoke with the Oversoul. His family would be a joke for some time to come. How the satirist found out about his father's vision so fast was also concerning. Was father just blabbing his supposed vision to anyone that would listen? The family would not remain respected for long if this was the case. Not many people believed that the Oversoul, if it even existed, actually gave visions, and it never gave visions to men. As the satire confirmed for Naif, his father would be painted as a con man, trying to lie his way to more wealth and power. Then, Naif realized that this scene was taking place on the private portico, where it was only his mother, father, Isib, and the 2 girls besides himself. He must have been one of the girls who told this story to the satirist, or at least to someone who then told the satirist. Naif knew that Louette girl was a no-good liar. As Naif continued to watch the rehearsal, one of the actors got into a debate with the satirist who wrote the play, and in the process, he took his mask off. It was Naif's oldest brother, Meb. Well, that explained where Meb was getting his money from, at least. Naif couldn't help himself, and he confronted Meb. How could he play a leading role in a satire aiming to embarrass his own father? Meb, however, had had no way to know that this was about his father. He was not at the portico, and the satirist had not told him. Instantly, Meb knew what the satirist had planned. He was planning on unmasking Meb once the play was over to further embarrass the family. He confronted the satirist, who barely denied it, before basically admitting to it in not so many words. Now, Meb was out of a job, and even worse, his father had destroyed any respect his family once had. That evening, Meb and Father Wechik argued over his father claiming he had a vision. Naif and Elia, the second oldest son, argued over what to do about Father's vision, and the next day, Naif and his mother argued over him leaving class the day before. Meb believed that Father should stop spreading his vision around, drawing ridicule. Elia believed that Father claiming that the Oversoul wanted to go back to the old ways would destroy his and his cohort's plans. The Oversoul banned wheeled transports as blasphemy, yet Elia and his cohorts were conspiring with a nearby city, Pataku, to create war wagons and transport wagons. They would ally with Pataku and make them war wagons for their war against another city, the Gorani, in exchange for the plans for these wagons. As a trader, Elia wanted the wagons to make his trips more profitable, but if they went back to the old ways, the Pataku would not get their war wagons, and Elia would not get his transport wagons to help with his trading routes. And finally, Mother Rasa believed that Naif was just a male child, not worthy of anything but derision.
Where did you spend all day yesterday?
Nafai didn't want this conversation, but there was no avoiding it. Mother was not one to let one of her students disappear for a day without an accounting.
I walked around.
I didn't think that you flew. Though I'm surprised you didn't curl up somewhere and sleep. Where did you go?
There's some very educational places.
Dolltown?
There's nothing much going on there in the daytime, Mother.
And you shouldn't be going there at all. Or do you think you already know everything about everything, so that you have no further need of schooling?
There are some subjects you just don't teach here, Mother.
Ah, Dell was right about you.
Oh yes, wonderful. Time to get an auntie for your little boy.
I should have seen it coming. Your body is growing so fast. Too fast, I fear. Outstripping your maturity in every other area.
This was too much to bear. He had planned to listen calmly to everything she said, let her jump to her own conclusions, and then get back to class and have done with the whole thing. But to have her thinking that his gonads were running his life when, if anything, his mind was more mature than his body.
Is that as smart as you know how to be, Mother? You see something inexplicable going on, and if it's a boy doing it, you're sure it has to do with his sexual desires.
I do have some knowledge of men, Nafai. And the idea that the behavior of a 14-year-old might have some link to sexual desire is based on much evidence.
But I'm your son, and you still don't know me from a pile of bricks.
So you didn't go to Dolltown?
Not for any reason you'd imagine.
Ah, I can imagine many reasons, but not one of the possible reasons for you to go to Dolltown suggests that you have very good judgment.
Oh, and you're the expert on good judgment, I imagine?
You forget, I think, that I am your mother and your schoolmistress.
It was you, Mother, and not I, who invited those two girls to our family meeting yesterday.
And this showed poor judgment on my part?
Extremely poor. By the time I got to the open theater, it was still several hours before dark, and already the word was out about Father's vision.
That's not surprising. Father went directly to the clan council. It would hardly be a secret after that.
Not just his vision, Mother. There was already a satire in rehearsal, one of Drodek's too, no less, that included a fascinating little portico scene, since the only people present who were not family were those two witch girls.
Hold your tongue. You referring to them by that demeaning man word is offensive in the extreme. Luette is a seer, and Hashida is a raveler. Furthermore, both have been completely discreet, mentioning nothing to anyone.
Oh, have you been watching them every second since?
I said hold your tongue. For your information, my bright, wise, mature little boy, the reason there was a portico scene at Drodek's satire, which, by the way, I saw, and it was very badly done, so it hardly worries me. The reason there was a portico scene was because while your father was going to the clan council, I was at the city council, and when I told the story, I included the events on the portico. Why? Asks my brilliant son, with a deliciously stupid look on his face. Because the only thing that made the council take your father's vision seriously was the fact that Luette believed him and found his vision consonant with her own.
Mother had told. Mother had brought down ridicule and ruin upon the family. Unbelievable.
Ah.
I thought you'd see things a little differently.
I see that there was nothing wrong with having Luette and Hashida at the family meeting. It was you who should have been excluded.
Her hand lashed out across his face. If she had been aiming for his cheek, she missed. Perhaps because he reflexively drew his head back. Instead, her fingernail caught him on the chin, tearing the skin. It stung and drew blood.
You forget yourself, sir.
Not as badly as you have forgotten yourself, madam, he answered. Or rather, that was how he meant to answer. He even began to answer that way, but in the middle of the sentence, the enormity of her having struck him that way, the shock and hurt of it, the sheer humiliation of his mother hitting him reduced him to tears.
I'm sorry.
Though what he really wanted to say was, "How dare you? I'm too old for that. I hate you." It was impossible to say such harsh things, however, when he was crying like a baby. Nafai hated it. How tears had always come so easily to him, and it wasn't getting any better as he got older.
Maybe next time you'll remember to speak to me with the proper respect.
But she, too, was unable to maintain her sharp tone, for even as she spoke, he felt her arm around him as she sat beside him, comforted him. She could not possibly understand that the way she nestled his head to her shoulder only added to the humiliation and confirmed him in his decision to regard her as an enemy. If she had the power to make him cry because of his love for her, then there was only one possible solution for him: to cease loving her. This was the last time she would ever be able to do this to him.
You're bleeding.
It's nothing.
Let me staunch it. Here, with a clean handkerchief, not that horrible rag you carry in your pocket, you absurd little boy.
That's all I'll ever be in this house, isn't it? An absurd little boy. He pulled away from her, refused to let the handkerchief touch his chin, but she persisted and dabbed at the wound, and the white cloth came away surprisingly bloody. So he took it from her hand and pressed it against the wound.
Deep, I guess.
If you hadn't moved your head back, my nails wouldn't have caught your chin like that.
If you hadn't slapped me, your nails would have been in your lap. But he held his tongue. After Mother Rasa finished blaming the victim for making her hurt him, she left to attend her business. And Naif, left alone on the portico, did what no man was allowed to do. He passed the dividing screen and went to the balcony and looked out across the holy lake far below in the Rift Valley. Hey, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you staying this long, and since you did, hopefully that means you like my channel. So I'd really appreciate it if you would like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe, so I can see you back here for the next one. Take care.